We in here. Let's talk some color. See if I got one of my books on me. Well, I know we got one of the classics. Get out of there. We got one of the classics, had it since it released. Yo, Tyrus Thomas in the building. Of course, you gotta have to eat right for your haplotype. I had that classic. It's got the boy on the back with the family. I had this book since it came out. Just let y'all know I keeps it on me. But won't really be going through that in this live stream. Got about an hour to bang out a little bit with you. But I'm just gonna make some commentary. I'm trying to help by doing the live streams. Like some of you guys probably saw me on Urban Nerds yesterday. I did commentary about the paper on Urban Nerds, letting people know about it. I just put a status up on Urban Nerds telling people where to go look at the paper so they can go check it out. And I did some early commentary back when he first released the paper on this channel about a week ago, because I wanted to make some commentary on it. This time it's specific commentary, but this is just me showing you guys. Yo, Barbara in the building. This is me showing you guys how important, me personally, I believe the paper actually is. Before I started, what we call the conscious community, before I got into it, I just a little bit of backstory about me was, I had half my family, like on my mom's side, was like the Christian side, and on my dad's side, it was the non-Christian side, but they believed in God, right? So it wasn't an issue of believing in God, but my dad's side, they were like, nah, I'm not in the Christian thing or nothing like that. But what happened was, a lot of the my mom's side of the family, a lot of people were getting sick and passing away. And there's nothing worse than seeing people pass away, and they're constantly telling you like, oh, they're getting older. And, when you get older, you get pains and you get sick and all this stuff. Like, they're conditioning me to feel this way. But at the same time, people would get sick and you would hear God's going to bring them out. And then they pass away. And then it's like, well, it was God's timing. And it's like, I know my dad used to bring a bit of a balance by saying things that I was actually thinking, which was, what's up with the certainties, right? Was it God or was it not God? Do we know or do we not know? Like, you never know. And he feels that the commentary that most Christians bring is always relative to the situation. So it can never be wrong. And he was like, he doesn't feel like that's right. Either things need to be exact and work, or they're not. There can't be, we believe, but nothing ever works. And then when something suddenly works, we can't explain it. And then when somebody scientifically comes up with an explanation, a religious person will reject it. But then you get scientific people rejecting religion. So it's kind of like this bouncing back and forth. It's almost like the having the Republican versus Democrat argument, right? But yeah, so what was happening was people were passing away. And in my mind, it's like, whether you guys believe God or no God, the atheist thing or whatever, in my mind, I was thinking there's no way in hell God made a biological life form that self-destructs, so to speak. It can run out of energy. You can get tired, fall. You know how people used to say you would die in your sleep. I could get down with that. But the whole, as your body gets older, it's just going to start. You're just going to go into pain and suffering, and then everyone dies in pain and suffering. I couldn't get down with that. So, and if you tried to question anything that they were saying back in those days, you got smacked. You got smacked up, smacked in your mouth, and all that. So when I got old enough, I started reading the book for myself, and because I'm searching for what I believe. It's weird to me if I'm not going to push that on anybody else. It would be weird for me to say that they believed in the things that were like bad for people. Like that would be weird. I don't want to speak on, my parents' behalf or anyone's behalf. I'm speaking on my behalf, but there's no way in hell I'm going to go with the belief that you're supposed to get old, sick, and die. And it's just who I am. So when I start reading the book, my eyes are more open to hear what I want to hear, right? It's something that people commonly do when they put up a wall, right? So I wasn't reading the Bible looking for pain and death and suffering. I was looking for things that talked about healing and life and living because that's what resounded with me. And, you go to Genesis and you see things like the fruit with the seed shall be for meat. And then at that point, you realize in your own mind that the the way it's taught to you, they changed the definition of meat. Like it used to be in the Bible, it's fruit with the seeds. In real life, they call meat what the Bible would call flesh, right? Yo, Black Voltron in the building, salute. So yeah, so I couldn't get down with that. So I see in the Bible it says the fruit with the seed shall be for meat. That's one, right? And then I see towards Revelation something that Dr. Sebi used to mention, and he was talking about how the leaves of the tree shall be for the healing of the nations, right? Yo, what's going on? Thanos is in the building. So I see, so now I got the fruit with the seed shall be for meat. I got the leaves of the tree shall be for the healing of the nations. And yeah, if you read the scripture, it's a little bit different, but it practically says the same thing. It says, in the midst of the street and on both sides of it, there will be the tree, and it will be the leaves of it thereof containing shall be for the healing of the nations. Like it's worded a little bit different, right? So I got this conundrum. One side of my family is talking about God and what God does, and it's up and down. And then on my dad's side, it's kind of like things are pretty much more logical. So for that reason, they both believe in God, but they kind of have different points of view about it. Kind of sided more towards my dad because when I would question things as a child, you expect to get an answer, not to get hit in the mouth for blasphemy or talking back or something like that. But you just, in your mind, you're like, yeah, I mean, you got, to me, it's like you guys are selling me that God is the reason somebody died in pain. Like I couldn't get down with that. So again, that's why I read the book for myself. So I get older, I start chasing down more things that agree with what it is I believe, right? Now, I'm a comic book head, love WWF wrestling growing up, love comic books, Marvel. I was more Marvel head than DC, but Marvel, DC, Image, which had Spawn and all that, I was with it. So you can see already my background has a lot to do with art because I started, using my hands. I started drawing. If you guys have been on my Instagram and you've swiped through it, you'd see every once in a blue moon, some artwork in there on the cartoon side, on the realism side. So you guys kind of know, like people know me for what they met me doing. Back when I was doing the artwork, I studied a lot of physiology books. Like I like seeing books that had the skeleton and the muscles in there. And what was funny was people used to laugh because it turned into a lot of the women comic book characters I drew was too muscular. They weren't big. They were the correct size, but they had cuts everywhere. Like they were cut the hell up. So they're basically bodybuilding women. So I just got a knack for that. So I got really good at learning the anatomy really early in my life, like the skeletal structure, the muscle structure, and all that stuff like that. So if you guys can't tell by now, what I'm doing is I'm building a case where I'm to an extent able to have some commentary about certain things concerning the pigment discussion that I put in the title, right? So there goes my art background. I grow up, I do all this drawing. Me and my friends help make comic books together. Some of them are comedy joints, some of them are like action. I'm into the Dragon Ball Z thing. People got powers and all kinds of stuff. Big up RTP, I see you in the building. Jamar Allen, would it be like? So we do the comic book thing, as most kids do, watch the wrestling. So, all this entertaining stuff, video games, right? I get into college and I'm like, I'm already making money at this art thing. So let me choose something a little more technological. So I choose graphic design, right? So I get into graphic design. Um, how things lay out is composition. That's not a problem for me. My art background, and mind you guys, I come from I'm born probably from the combination of two basically artists. My dad was a fine artist. My mom was a fashion designer and a model, and she liked to design clothes and stuff too. But I have, like, me as a human being, I guess you could say, you can call it talent, but to me, talent is something practiced. You might have physical capabilities based on how your parents came together. It's almost kind of like a person being born tall with very long wingspan would be great for basketball. It doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to be great at basketball, but that gives them an advantage. So to begin starting a little bit about pigment, if I were to get really close, you guys could probably see that I have The iris of my eye is brown. And if you study pigments in the human body, you'll know that brown represents a strong unification of pigmentation, whereas other colors, like greens and blues and grays and eye color, actually represent less melanin and pigment in the actual eye. So I say that to say that I genetically I may have had an advantage in terms of having that kind of eye, because based on the science of it all, people with more melanated eyes can actually see far more color and their vibrancy and ranges and levels and stuff like that. Can I 100% prove that? I'm not another human being, but we know the condition exists. Like, we're definitely, based on eye pigmentation and other proteins and stuff found within the body genetically, can determine how much color you can see, how vividly you dream, and all kinds of stuff like that, right? Um, thanks, RTP. But yeah, so I'm just qualifying the things that I do in my life that consider art, color, composition. So I went to college, I took up graphic design. Of course, it required a lot of art classes. I didn't need them, but it's just a part of the curriculum, right? And a part of graphic design is typography, which is how you manage letters on book covers and magazines and all that stuff like that. How colors work together, why you choose one color over another, why certain colors work together real well where other ones don't. And regardless of whether people try and break those rules or not, just for their own comfort level, the rules still remain. Like, for instance, if you guys ever seen movies like Schindler's List, the movie was in black and white, but the little girl on there was in red. You notice in certain movies, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I think even Rihanna did this in Ocean's 8. She came down the steps with a red dress on, red lipstick. What's noticeable is red draws attention. Red also, they can show you that it means stop. Red can also mean very deep passion or on the love side, which is why women wear lipstick. But if you look at their lips, you'll notice that the hook on their lips helps shape it as like a heart. So it's not just the heart that you see and the one you draw. Actually, their lips kind of make a really strong heart shape. So it's very attractive to stare at. Symmetry. Symmetry is very important. Back in the day, in ancient times, they didn't measure whether you were pretty or ugly based on like features of the face. It was based on symmetry, how symmetrical your face was. So things lining up perfectly from left to right, top to bottom, made you attractive. It was symmetry. It wasn't, oh, they got big lips, big nose, small lips, big ears, small ears. It had nothing to do with that. Just how symmetrical you were. Okay. What's up? That's right. Like, subscribe. Thanks. Black Voltron hitting it as always. Some chick named Star. What's going on? Peace, peace. What's up? So I'm in college. I'm getting this extra knowledge, how to use Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, how to lay things out on paper. And it comes easy to me because of my fine art background. Now, while I'm in graphic design, I get access to the camera equipment. I get access to the video camera, the photography camera, and all that stuff like that, right? And some people are like, oh, so you learn photography formally. And I'm like, no, photography. So the difference between me drawing and painting and, maybe sculpting or something like that, but drawing and painting definitely is, I'm using my hands to create the image, where in photography, I'm just composing a shot, meaning I'm making sure that elements in the scene line up in a certain way to make it attractive to look at. And then I just push the button. So the hard work in photography is not learning the equipment. I could teach anybody the equipment in 2 hours. And I'm talking like a solid understanding in 2 hours, not just, you've heard it before. After that, it's all about speed. How fast can you use the camera to get the shot you're looking for? So the creativity in photography has nothing to do with, oh, I bought a camera, so therefore I charge you a lot of money. It's the mind, the vision, the expertise behind when I push the button. It's one thing for me to say like, oh, somebody's about to get punched in the face and you got a shot. You took a photo of it and I took a photo of it. Getting the photo is a good start because now it's documented. Getting the photo and making it look good and very attractive is a totally different thing. Okay, so these are just the little things in the art world that we pay attention to, that people who are usually beginners who don't understand these things, especially in business, they kind of flag it off as, I could just do what it is that I want to do. So people tend to not pay attention to their business card design, what colors are on them. If they sell like gear, there's a reason that the compositions don't line up a certain way. Their website, they just have one, right? They just throw things on it and be like, it's on there. but they don't realize that the location of things, the size of things, the color of things is very important. So now let's go a little bit deeper. So what I was doing for you guys was I was qualifying my ability to talk about pigment within the body. And I need you to understand things you deal with in real life have a lot to do with that. So for instance, in Dr. Enqi's paper, you always notice that there's a connection between pigment and light. In the photography world, that is the same too, because they have a grid that comes on your camera if you learn how to access it that measures intensity and depth of actual color. So I learned long ago inside of this filmmaker's manual that humans can only perceive but so many colors in reality versus a digital screen. And I'm not 100%, it's not easy for me to remember, but I know it was the human body was marked somewhere around 16,000 colors, and the computer was somewhere like I think in the 200,000 range or something like that. And because of that, you could take a picture or film a certain object. Totally like, now remember, when you take, it's kind of like if I gave you a book, like Dr. Enqi's book, right? If I gave you a book and then you read the whole book and you get the point, but then later on, I snatch 60% of the info out the book and still I'm able to get the point across. Although, depending on what you're using it for, quality has been a bit reduced. So let's say I read this whole book, taught you the whole book based on 20% of it, but not the full amount, but you get the concept. What's going to happen is when you try and use that information to perform some real life feat, like, heal somebody or something like that, you're going to be missing pertinent details that allow you to gain maximum quality and what's the term I want to use? And maximum quality and result that you're looking for. Well, it's the same thing in the color world. When you guys take a picture or you film video on your cell phone or on a very high-end camera, to make things cheaper, you reduce the amount of memory that's being recorded. So when you take the picture and it's got all 200,000 or whatever digital colors, that's going to take up more memory. But because the human can't perceive but so much of that total, that 200,000, you can only get like 16,000 out of it. They can snatch most of that color out of there. You still get the quality of picture. So when you go to the movie theater, they actually knock out, there's red, green, and blue, RGB, right? Roy G. Biv. They knock out part of the, which spectrum is it? Like the picture is a little bit more blue and green and a little less red. So what happens is they knock out some of the color and you still look at it crispy and perceive it very well and don't even know majority of the colors have been removed. You might notice something, but not the majority. Now, if I'm going to do Marvel Comics movies and, and Transformers and all these crazy special effects, I got to do proper color matching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot the camera in raw mode, meaning I'm going to take that picture and I'm going to keep all the whole book of information, right? And after I keep that whole book of information, even though my eyes can't see it, I need to know that the computer has the info, because when I do my digital graphics on a computer and then I try and match that up to what the video camera did, I need to know I have the full range of data to get the proper color matching. Because a part of knocking out most of that data just to shrink the file size is, well, maybe there's 5,000 shades of green. You might have knocked out 75% of them. Now, if your digital character is wearing a certain green and the filming you did had a certain green, now it's impossible to reproduce the color because you knocked out the information that said it could be done. So now that's a little bit in the background of video editing, shooting, and stuff like that. What about the body, right? So think of how cameras work. I'm a photographer. In the human eye, the eye has the ability to interact with what people who know about this already interact with frequencies. All the colors and things that you see are nothing more than frequencies, intensities of vibration. Okay. And they're in the visible spectrum of the electromagnetic spectrum. Remember, the electromagnetic spectrum is this long bar that we usually see when we search it online. And it's got microwaves and radio waves and UV rays and gamma rays. And then there's the visible color spectrum, which is a tiny portion in the middle of that long chart. The reason it's black on both sides of the chart is because that's outside of the visual range. But that doesn't mean there's no frequency and no light. It's just not strong enough, or it's too strong to stay within the visible light spectrum. Now, you guys know, usually when visible light gets too strong, the intensity is too high, it kind of hurts when you look at it. Because remember, it's a frequency, it's a vibration. If it's striking the eye, your eye can absorb a certain amount of it. But when it's too strong, it's no different than somebody punching you in the face. Some people punch you, you don't feel it. Some people punch you and you really feel it. So the intensity is much higher. So with the eye, all these frequencies are striking your eye. If your eye can't pick up the frequency, then it's black, it's too dark. If the frequency is vibrating too high, then it's very bright. And eventually it's bright to the point where you start to squint because your eye's trying to shut down the hole that allows the frequencies in so it doesn't take in too much and destroy the eyeball. It doesn't destroy the receptors and the ability for you to perceive color because everything has a balancing range and a limit. Okay. So what allows us to do that? Even though you have the iris here, which allows us to interface and allow different frequencies of color to come in, the ability for your body, as it is a pigment, it allows your body to interface and interact with those frequencies coming in without doing a lot of damage. Once it goes through that iris, in the back of that eyeball, you can't see it, but it would be, you know, in the back of that eyeball, you have the rods and you have the cones. Rods give you the ability to perceive the intensity of light, right? Darkness, brightness, right? We're talking brightness. We're not talking like saturation, which is weird. Saturation would be like a pigment you could hold in your hand. Brightness is just light. It's fleeting. You can't touch the light. You can reach through it, but it's very bright. Okay. So yeah. So basically your rods have to do with brightness. So when it starts to get dark in your room, the little grayish flickering you see is your body picking up intensities of frequency as best as it can. So usually your TV is on, and guess what? And even if it's a color TV, it's because it's presenting a certain amount of frequency and brightness. That's why you're picking it up. But the other areas in the room that's dark, it looks milky gray going towards the blue, and it's getting dim and darker, right? Now, the side of your body that picks up color is the cones. So the cones allow you to perceive color, and they come in three types of wavelengths: short, medium, long wavelengths. And that just has to do with when the mountain peaks on the wave, how far apart are they? You know, so long wave is very far away. Medium, you see the mountain peaks faster, and short wave is the mountaintops are pretty close together. So that's what that means. Now, you got three types, you got three colors. You got RGB, Roy G. Biv. Roy G. Biv stands for all the colors: Roy, red, orange, yellow; G, green; Biv, blue, indigo, violet. Okay, so because of Roy G. Biv, we have access to that entire visible color spectrum within the eye. The cones can pick up color if the vibration intensity of the light gets strong enough to reach the color spectrum. So remember, you're sitting outside, you're seeing in the Roy G. Biv spectrum. If the Roy G. Biv spectrum frequencies are not bright enough, you see black. If it's within the color spectrum, you're going to see anything in the Roy G. Biv range. If it's too bright, then it's going to be very intense as well as saturated. So you're going to see white, and it's going to be so intense, vibrating so much, your eye can't take it. So it makes you squint. You're squinting because the light's coming in on this giant cone, but when you squint, you start to reduce the size of the cone so your eye can take it. If it's just too strong, it's going to make you cry. You're going to close your eyes tight because you're trying to avoid the frequency that's hurting your eye. It's beyond the spectrum you can receive it. So it can either be below or beyond. Okay. Now, what's the pigment part that Dr. Enqi was trying to tell people? The quality and the reason a thing can receive and actually interact with the environment, interact with the light given off by the environment, the frequencies. Frequencies produce light. Depending on what spectrum the light is in, it can be heard, touched, taste, seen, smelled, different types of frequencies. Not everything can be seen. I don't want anybody thinking that the ability to perceive frequencies has to do with what can be seen. It's far more than just what can be seen. Seen, heard, touch, taste, and it may even be outside of your perspective to perceive it, because maybe we can perceive every spectrum in the universe. We're just not that good yet. Okay? Emmanuel Briggs in the building. So we have to understand that. Now, what about the pigments? What pigments are in this eye? Okay, rods, rhodopsin. You have another one called iodopsin cones. Okay, these are pigments. Pigments, color. Because the color exists, depending on how deep or not deep that color is, will determine the frequency range it can interface with, so it can receive the proper frequency and either radiate it back out, transduce it so it can be used with as an electrical signal within the body, which is what we're familiar with eyes doing. Frequencies come in, they create electrical signals. It goes down through the optic nerve channel, reaches into the brain. The brain sees it upside down, decodes it, turns it right side up. Remember, the visual cues you see outside are actually upside down as they come in. It flips right side up. And guess what? I'm a photographer. Cameras do it too. The shot comes in upside down, and the camera's memory systems and processor flip it right side up. The camera has what they call an aperture. Now, you guys know if someone's on drugs, or if it's very dark in the room, and it's very funny if you guys do this in a very dark room, like have someone stand in front of you and then turn the lights off, and without your then turn your camera's flash on. Try and make it so the camera flash doesn't flicker. Make sure it booms one time, because otherwise their eyes are going to focus. But when there's very low light in the room, the iris dilates. It actually opens up. Why? Because it's trying to open up a bigger cone to catch whatever light that it can get. So with the camera, if the room is dark and get someone to stand right in front of you, shut the lights off, boom the flash one time and take a picture, I swear it's going to look like they're looking at you like this. And the iris is going to be wide open because you flashed the eye trying to catch what color it could, and then you suddenly boomed it with light before the iris could adjust. Now, the flash is probably going to hurt their eyes a little bit because their eyes were prepared for very little light to come in, so it opened the iris way up, and then you threw a lot of light at it. And that's why you catch them with that really surprised look. So, Tariq energetic in the building. So we don't want to take that for granted. So the pigments in the eyes, as Dr. Enqi's paper says, pigments interact with the frequencies, technically meaning they interact with the light. So I'm using the eye as a starting example. Melanin in the skin is a whole different example, but we'll get there. So we got rhodopsin rods, iodopsin cones. When the electrical signal comes in, it goes through the optic nerve and is decoded by the brain. Now, what pigments are in the brain? You guys have heard of the substantia nigra, which means substantially black. What you have to understand about black in the world of an artist, if I were to start taking a bunch of colors, pens, pencils, stuff like that, not brightness, I'm just talking about colors, things with pigment in them, pens, color pencils, markers, things like that. And I start scribbling a bunch of them together, the color is going to move towards brown and eventually black, signifying that all the colors I put down there have unified to a new color. So you mix certain colors, like what do they say, red and green gives you purple, that kind of stuff, right? You see how color mixing gives you a deeper color? Well, mixing all of them starts to give you brown and blacks. But what does it tell me if I were to break those colors back apart? That the brown and black consist of interacting with multiple colors in harmony to make one new color, which is brown or black. So you no longer have to question based on me saying that. I'm taking a real life example you can do, and I'm applying it to the science given to us in the body without performing a biological test, but by performing a physical one, which is using color in art. Since we know that all the colors being scribbled in together will produce brown or black, and in some cases, depending on how you mix them, you'll get gray. You get like a milky gray. But the gray is usually leaning towards the warm side or cool side, depending on how many warm or cool colors you put in it. But you're reaching towards brown and blue, okay? So what happens is you got this unification of color. If you split it apart, you get all the colors you made it up of. Because it's made up of a thing, it actually has the intelligence to interact with the thing. So if a part of my scribbling colors together is yellow, if I shoot a yellow frequency into it, it can interact with it. However, if I try and put something that vibrates or saturates brown into something that's just yellow, then if the thing from the outside is stronger than the thing coming inside, it'll destroy it. Okay? So how do we know? Sunlight gives off a very strong vibration, and sunlight is a mixture of multiple frequencies, and they're very strong and bright. So when it strikes skin, if something's giving off multiple frequencies and the skin is brown to black, that means the skin can interface with brown to black, which is a mixture of multiple colors. So if the sun gives off a mixture of multiple colors very fast at a high frequency, then the thing that has the color to interface with it can absorb it and do something with it much better than something that doesn't have the color and can absorb and interface with it. I hope this is making sense. Okay. So that which can interface with multiple colors can utilize multiple colors. That which has not interfaced with multiple colors or doesn't present to cannot interface with multiple colors. So in the world of art, saturation of colors turns brown and black because you're mixing a bunch of colors together and you're moving darker and darker. When you haven't put anything down on the paper yet, it's white. Therefore, the lighter color does not interface as well. It's a blank canvas. So the moment you start going nuts on it, it's receiving something very fast it's not ready for. So in skin terms, right, darker side, lighter side, if I want to draw in frequencies from the sun faster, I point the lighter side towards the sun. Dr. Enqi taught this years ago in one of his lectures. He said the original hands up, don't shoot position used to be the position of worshiping the sun. Why? Because if you had your feet bald and on the ground, meaning nothing on your feet, you were grounding, you were drawing in the ions from the earth, charging your body up, dissipating the inflammation, and you had your hands towards the sun receiving the vibrations. And obviously, if you guys ever sit in your car on when the sun is between 10 and 2 during UVB times, if you're in like the northern hemisphere, which is usually for most people between like 10 o'clock in the morning and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, shoot, just turn your hand over, stick it out the window and leave it hands down, let the sun hit it on top. Now switch to the other hand and turn your hand upside down and do it again. You're going to notice the lighter side starts to heat up faster because there is no colors already on the paper, so to speak, to slow down the transition of color into the space. There's no pigment stopping the transition of the frequencies into the skin. I'm saying the same thing. Okay. So what you do is it starts to burn faster. So let me give you another analogy. Imagine, it's a couple of ways to get this analogy, but it has to do with frequency of a thing. So if I go like this and the frequency is I'm tapping once per second. I could probably take this all day to the point where the day ends and I can go to sleep. At the end of the day, though, if I keep doing that, I might have a little red there, a little inflammation, just a little bit, because it's not a hard strike and it's not frequent. And it's not happening enough for me to even feel any heat, which means I'm not going to really feel any pain. Okay. But if eventually I bring something in and I start going like this, very fast and rubbing very hard as I do it, a much shorter period of time, I'm going to feel pain and it's going to cause a lot of heat because the frequency went up and the intensity went up, meaning not only am I doing this faster, I'm hitting harder. So I hit it a lot harder. So I'm introducing a frequency, which is eventually a heat. It's basically something beating down and disturbing you, causing a friction. When the sun's rays are hitting your skin, it's doing the same thing. It's like a silent tap happening extremely fast. And because it's happening so fast, it's heating you up very quick. It's creating a high amount of friction. By having the melanin there, the melanin is able to see that frequency like a sharp string coming in real fast. And it's almost like taking that string, and as soon as it strikes, it takes that string and it stretches it out so the frequencies don't hit as hard. And then it starts to separate and break down. So imagine all these colors that make up black and brown. When it gets absorbed in, imagine that it can be broken apart into the many colors that make it up to an extent, which technically slows it down and creates a slower frequency, a slower vibration. Like for instance, in the color spectrum, the red spectrum is not going to hit as hard as the indigo spectrum. So purple vibrates higher than red. So because of that, you're going to find out that the purple can strike and burn you up faster. Because remember, it's more friction, faster speed, more pressure, more heat. Radiation, when people get hit with a nuke and all that, what is the thing causing the damage? The heat. When you watch movies with radiation poisoning in it, what's happening? When people walk into the radiation zone, they start burning. What happens when a person with light skin stands in the sun too long? The skin starts burning. Who doesn't burn as fast? The person with more pigment, the person with more color. Melanin, rhodopsin, iodopsin, lutein, zeaxanthin in your blood, heme, in the plant, chlorophyll. You see what I mean? So these colors exist to interface with different pigments. And by being able to interface with a pigment, you're able to capture and receive frequencies. The frequencies help produce an electric charge. An electric charge to use for what? Energy. You can either radiate it back out or use it to power the body. If it's powering the body, we know that elements are included in that. The elements could be hydrogen, it could be oxygen. Phosphorus has a certain chemical composition. Oxygen has a certain chemical composition. When you breathe in oxygen consistently, it causes the phosphorus to pulsate and light up, because the frequency coming in from one thing to another, the frequency is the information. The frequency is the light. The pigment interfaces with the frequency, therefore it interfaces with the light. If it interfaces with the light and the frequencies can help create shapes, that means if it powers the body, it can create a shape. It's giving you information. The information is proven as active because electricity makes it animate, makes it move, and the light proves that it has the intelligence to move in a certain direction. Therefore, pigments interface with frequencies, which means they interact with light. When you gather enough light, the light keeps the body healthy, keeps the body active, keeps the body going. So when Dr. Enqi says that the body is powered by light, he means it. Mitochondria bring the electricity and the recycling of the phosphorus so that the phosphorus sticks around and keeps you lit. The electricity keeps the animation going. The movement of the body keeps the friction going. The pressure on the body with piezoelectric crystals like bone keeps more power generating. So the electricity keeps the movement. The light makes you intelligent and keeps you alive, along with the oxygen and the phosphorus. The pigment helps you interface with the light and the frequencies to help the body have the intelligence to grow and move forward and keep living. When you destroy the pigment, you destroy the ability to interface with the frequencies and therefore the light. And if you don't have light constantly coming in with the frequencies, the electricity, the magnetism, the body starts to degrade and you start to get sick. Hence, in Enqi's paper, it talks about the sugar degrading the pigment in the brain. Substantia nigra, remember, that means substantially black. If the sugar is getting into the brain and starts eating away at the neurons have melanin in them, which is a pigment. You eat away at the melanin, you eat away at the ability for it to receive light, energy, frequency, which causes your brain to break up. It creates holes in the brain. It doesn't have the energy, it doesn't have the light to keep itself continuously alive. So it starts to break down. You start to lose your memory. All kinds of stuff brain-wise start going down. What about the pigment on the skin? Well, if it can't accept the charge, it's going to burn. And if it burns, it starts to turn black, and they call that skin cancer, right? But then if you don't get enough, then the melanocytes start to fall asleep. You're not interfacing enough, right? And if you're not receiving those frequencies, you're not making that vitamin D, you're not getting that hormone cascade, you're not presenting certain hormones in your body, so instructions are not there, and things start to go wrong with that. Then you have the sugar that can eat away at the eye. So remember, the eye has the rhodopsin, iodopsin, lutein, zeaxanthin inside of it. Sugars start passing through the blood vessels there. You start to see the sugar stick to the pigment colors inside of there. It doesn't allow it to receive frequencies properly. It starts to dehydrate and destroy the pigment in that area. You lose your vision. You start to destroy the pigment in the foot. Why? Because you got sugar in there. It's dehydrating the area. If it's dehydrating the area is not flexible. It's not receiving water that can help carry the charges and things that are rolling through it. So eventually, lack of oxygen, lack of charge, the area starts to atrophy, which means it's starting to decay. It starts to decay. It starts to turn colors that are like green and purple, showing that it's decaying, and then eventually black, and then the doctor has to cut it off. So this is the connection with the diabetes. So hold on, let me see what you guys are saying. I hope this is making sense. I'm connecting the real world of color to the body world of pigment. And pigment is, remember, if we're talking pigment, we're talking about things that can be seen. But all light is not only seen. Remember, some light you can hear. You're hearing a frequency. Something is vibrating the medium you're in. When it vibrates the medium and it can't be seen, the ear starts to vibrate. Because remember, you're disturbing the air. And because your body is surrounded by atmospheric pressure, when someone disturbs it, if the disturbing wave meets your body in a certain way, if it can be heard, it'll start to vibrate on what we call the eardrum. But you got stuff called stapes and the oval window inside your body. That's the technical name. It's not necessarily a drum. It's something called stapes tapping on. Sorry about that, guys. I just got a call. So the stapes taps on the oval window. What you have is you got bone, you got liquid in the ear, you have pigment inside the ear. They interface with the frequency that comes in. The frequency becomes an electric charge. The electric charge goes through the audio canal, and that reaches into the vagus nerve, which also connects into the brain, which decodes the sound. So there's always a pigment surrounding. There's pigment in the ear. So as long as there's a pigment surrounding, it's a color body. Pigment is a color body, a chrome or chroma, that allows you to pick up frequencies within a certain, now we can say, color range. And because this color range can accept certain frequencies, it can draw certain things in, and then your body can use that info to create electricity and to decode things and to strike and create additional light through oxygen. So this is how deep the actual science can get. Let me see. Does this help with mudras and why hands are used in healing and magic? So there is I had a live stream one time where I was playing with something like that. And now here's the thing. A part of the sun spectrum is infrared light. Light, right? So we're talking about light. Light is a frequency, because when something vibrates strong enough, eventually starts to present light. Like obviously, if we could do this strong enough, we would eventually start seeing light appear. But we can't. But we have items that are electric based that create like alternating currents and things like that, where you can actually see the light. Okay. So because we have that, because the body gives off heat, right? Dr. Enqi talked about in a couple of his live streams, he was talking about how the chicken has to sit on the egg. When the chicken sits on the egg, it produces heat, and the heat has infrared light attached to it. Infrared light scientifically has the ability to help cells come back together. So if a person can generate energy towards their hands, which you're going to already have some, because if you ever had somebody like come near you and hover their hand around you, you can feel the heat. When the heat is near and the energy is channeled correctly, which is where now, I don't do this for a living, but you know it has to do with frequencies and channeling and energy channeling, right? So, you know, healing hands type stuff. So we know the energy, therefore the heat and the friction is being created. The shape of the frequency and the energy coming off is probably a part of the science. But if the hands can produce heat, it can produce infrared light. Infrared light can be healing. We already know that. That's the scientific part we know. So we know that somewhere in that mix is the ability to channel a certain amount of energy a certain way, match it to what it is that you're trying to heal. Because that's what Dr. Layla Africa talked about. How many of you guys in the chat listen to Dr. Layla Africa? Now, here's the thing. Enqi brought clarity to something Dr. Africa was trying to talk about. He used to always say, he has one lecture still out there where he talks about melanin. And Dr. Africa was hot on melanin when he learned about it. It's almost like he was heated at the world, because it's like, y'all don't understand. I was there. And melanin is the key to Black greatness. He was like, you can see more colors than other groups of people can see. You can taste the full flavor of foods. You can hear more sound than they can hear. He really went gung-ho with it without the detailed explanation, but I knew back then he was on to something. He was probably onto something that it looks like Dr. Enqi stood on his shoulders and picked up. So remember, Dr. Enqi was never scared to say, look, I stand on the elder's shoulders, but here's where they might have went a little out of bounds. So he grabbed up and carried forward what they started. He's not dissing the elders to say they weren't good at what they did. They carried us as far as they could before they left. And he picked up the pieces, just like we all do when we go study and learn our different positions in life as well as we can. So he also, Dr. Layla Africa also had this chart where he talked about the shapes people dance in, the types of notes they play in the music, the type of colors you put in front of a person has a frequency and an affiliation with your body. Now remember, what do they call the parts inside your body? Organs. Organs are sound. What's the organs play sounds, which means they vibrate to a certain tune. When Dr. Layla Africa would check your organs, he would use a tuning fork. You would put one part on the actual organ near it, and you would tap the tuning fork, and if it was off key for what it should be for that actual body part, that would mean that that body part is sick, and you knew what to target. Now, a tuning fork is giving off a sound. The organ gives off a frequency, which is a sound, whether you can hear it or not. Perhaps in the case of an organ frequency, it's a shape. See, that's why I said not everything can be seen, heard, taste, touch. It's many ways a frequency can present itself. So there's different ways you have to interact with it. So if we know that those organs have a certain frequency, meaning they have a certain sound, whether you can hear it or not, right? Because there's a threshold of sound. If I blow a dog whistle, you like, I got ears, I should be able to hear it. Not everybody can hear a dog whistle, but dogs can. So we know there's thresholds of hearing. So the thing exists whether we can hear it or see it or not. Okay? That's a given. So what we're saying with that is, if we take that frequency of that body part and we remember what Enqi said, his CD is called Oh, if you look at the Urban Nerds video I did yesterday, I got the picture of the front cover. I designed his CD cover. So if you look at the front cover of his CD, it says sound becomes light. Melanin has the ability to take either standing waves, static waves, or mechanical waves, use the body systems to decode those waves. So absorb it, can radiate it back out, transduce, decode those waves to make them become something. So if frequencies are information, because think about it, if my skin is a frequency, my organs are frequency, music is frequency, light is frequency, it allows me to see the shape of things, to see the world with a certain shape. So I always talked about, and previously before Enqi came out with this, I was talking to you guys a lot about proteins and shapes because form denotes function. So if a thing has a shape, you can determine what the actual function is. So if Dr. Enqi says sound becomes light, melanin has the ability to interact with vibrations, transduce those vibrations, and create voltage. And pigment has the ability to interact with light. So we got voltage, we got light, we got melanin. So if something is giving off a sound, then it's helping to create light. And light is intelligence. So now we see where the connections are. You see what I mean? This is where you start drawing the connections and it get deep. All I did was start off talking about my family history and health and all that stuff like that. Then I went into my art background, and then I went into the aesthetics of learning how to do art and take pictures and stuff properly. And then I moved into the talk about the eye, and then to talk about color, and then to talk about how color and things are used for perception. And then we're talking about how the body interfaces with that perception. And the one thing they both have in common between art and between real life is frequencies, which introduce light and color. But in biology, it's not like just art. Art has a lot to do with visualization and auditorial type stuff, right? So play music, I can hear. Paint pictures, draw pictures, do sculpture, I can see. But how much can I see? If the fact that I can see it means I'm interacting with the vibration that is those things. The fact that I can hear means my body's interacting with the vibration of those things that can be heard. So internally, it's the same way. The sun is sending out a frequency. If it's a frequency, there's a sound attached to it, whether you can hear it or not. The skin, because it has the melanin on it, the frequencies are UVB rays, so they're pretty high. So the question is, how long can you take the beating down of the frequency? If you can accept it, if I throw 200 pounds at you, can you catch it or will it drop? So maybe I have Caucasian skin types. You throw a big frequency at me, my skin catches it and it tries to hold on, and quickly it drops. I have more melanin, I can grab hold of it and actually control it to an extent until I get tired, and then it drops. And the more melanin I have, the longer I can hold it before I tire out. So there's a difference in biochemistry there. Now, he may have mentioned it. I haven't heard it yet, but Dr. Enqi always talks about a melanin concentrating hormone. You do your research on that. It's attached to sleep, perception, energy, all kinds of stuff. So melanin concentrating hormone is important. But here's what I didn't hear him tap on that had to do with possibly albinism and the inability for a Caucasian person to accept strong ultraviolet rays. It's called the melanocortin 1 receptor. Melanocortin 1 receptor is the receptor that has to do with melanin production. And some people don't have it active. So they're not going to tan. They're not going to produce more melanin when they're in the sun, which means it's far more dangerous for that person to be in an equatorial climate. They should actually be more in a polar climate. So for those who don't know, it's called melanocortin 1 receptor. Okay. Hold up, we got some more comments down here. See what we got. Sherry, what's going on? Yeah, I love Dr. Layla Africa. You can imagine my disappointment when he passed away. Right back in the beginning, I'm not saying it's from COVID, but he passed back in the beginning around, I think, March or May when COVID came in. And I was pissed because he was doing regular rounds going to that was crazy. But I'm getting a lot of calls all of a sudden. I'm gonna have to call some people back soon. It must be important. But yeah, so that's my take on pigment in a nutshell. My background being art, photography, I interface with colors and light and composition and stuff a lot. So when Dr. Enqi wrote the paper and started talking about pigment, started talking about light, started talking about the pigment in our bodies and diabetes and how the sugar sticks to our pigments, and by the sugar sticking to the pigment, it destroys the pigment. And since the pigment is what allows us to interface with frequencies and therefore light, then that is what's destroying our bodies, making us lose our capabilities over time, you know, and harming us. And that's why diabetes is such a big deal and why he named it melanin disease. And he called the system of light receiving and light creation within the body, he called it the Enqi cycle. So you should check out the videos, go to drenqi.com, read the study. If you don't understand parts of the study, the reason why I got good at understanding it is because way back in the beginning, when I would study papers and things like that, I stopped immediately on things I didn't know and I went to research them. So don't read a whole sentence and hear 5 words you don't understand and say, I think I got it, and move on and try and read the whole study. Stop on the words you don't know and the concepts and the parts you don't know. Go directly online and start getting a handle on what the word means. So don't let him say, like, yeah, you know, when the melanin interfaces with the PNS and all that stuff, and you just flag off PNS and move forward. Go find out that that's peripheral nervous system. Go find that out and then learn what the peripheral nervous system does. Give yourself some context because that's going to help you retain the information more. And I know in the gym, people always ask, you know, how do you guys retain so much information? You only retain what you care about. And if you find yourself not caring about things you should care about, then there's some priorities that need to be shifted and changed within a life. Some new experiences need to be had. Some new learning has to be done. Because I agree with Enqi because I go through this too. Like a lot of people are like, oh man, the video's 1 hour, it's 2 hours, it's this and that. And it's like, when you find out somebody took 20, 30, 40 years, even 10 years, even 2 years to discover some info, you took all these years and then you throw it back at somebody in an hour or two, even a few hours. Like I think Enqi's 11-hour video after putting 25 years into this stuff, it's fine with me. I can break that 11-hour video up. I don't have to watch it in one go. I mean, if we can, we do binge watch shows in one go. But most of the time, we know that we can just say, let me stop right now, get some rest, and I'll check and rest out later. You can do that. You can break an 11-hour video in 11 days. That's still great compared to 25 years. So I think it's definitely worth doing that. So yeah, that's my piece on the pigment, and based on what Dr. Enqi put out in his study and his paper. Again, go to drenqi.com to look at the paper. It's called diabetes. It's going to say title melanin versus. It's going to say diabetes versus melanin and a electromagnetic tissue. Okay, so that's the name of the paper. It's on the paper name is on the cover, on the thumbnail of this video. It's easy to find on his website. You also want to check out the Soulcraft scroll on there because that teaches you about aging, where people get the concepts about people aging come from. So those two kind of go hand in hand. Eventually, when I'm home, I'll get a chance to show you guys the illuminated version of the Soulcraft scroll that I created. And if you guys know what an illuminated manuscript is, back in the day, especially things like old Bibles and tomes, they used to use this old cathedral like script. They got it on your computers if you look it up. It's like a cathedral type script. I don't think it's it's not Times New Roman, but there's like this cathedral script. It's written in like a cathedral script. The first letter in all the paragraphs were really like cathedral, but cursive like, and they would have squares around them, and gold ornate foiling was used for like bordering the page. The page would have like a papyrus look. So it wasn't white paper. It was like a yellowish off white color paper. And it would have like a cloudy kind of look to it. So it would look like papyrus. It would have like a square or very ornate, meaning decorative border around it. And then the paragraphs would begin with a decorative letter, probably with a square in it. And then the letters themselves would go all the way down and be very neat. And some of them were embossed, which I can imagine that's expensive. And it's where you turn the paper around and you do this pinning to make the letters stick up off the page. And I wanted to get that done with mine, and I realized like it's going to be expensive as hell. So, and then I was going to get like a fantasy book cover to go along with it. And fantasy book covers are not cheap. And I try and look for ones already done to see if I can get imagine like Harry Potter type stuff or Doctor Strange. When they were in the library, you look at the cover of the book and it looked like it's got like decorative designs like sticking up from it, and then they got the cheap dust that you could blow off the book or whatever. So it looked pretty cool. I was trying to make something like that out of it, but it's expensive as hell. So haven't found anybody who could do the cover or willing to do just a single book like that. You're not going to do a bunch of books like that. I'm talking like in the hundreds of thousands just to make probably a few hundred copies. It'd be terribly expensive. Yo, Rostov Foundation, what's going on? All right, guys. If you got any questions, I'll wait a few minutes. I got about 15 minutes before I got to go into school. Today is what we photographing today. Today I got to photograph some badminton in one of the high schools, and then after that, there's some type of fundraiser event out in the Westchester area of Philadelphia. I got to photograph. They do the thing where it's like a casino. You pay money to buy chips to play games, and the games wins tickets that you put in boxes to win items in the boxes. So those are always interesting events. And, they always got they always got food in them, but they tend to primarily have like wine, cheese, honey, crackers. Like that one of those might be one of those kinds of events. We'll see. Truthfully, I just want some good old water and juice. That's all I'm gonna be looking for. So let me see. Any questions out there? Anything related to diabetes, high blood pressure, pigment in the system? I got about 5 minutes. I'll rattle some answers off, and then I'm gonna pack it up, get my camera ready, and then I'm gonna head in. Keep in mind, let people know about the paper and about these videos. Thanks, E. Let people know about these videos. Let them know about the papers. Especially on Urban Nerds. The one I did on Urban Nerds yesterday was a broad overview. It was a pretty broad overview about diabetes. I gave like my simple explanation, and then I tagged on some data from Enqi's paper towards the end on the Urban Nerds Worldwide channel. Be aware that Urban Nerds Worldwide is you said, what's the fastest way to lower blood pressure? The fastest way is for blood pressure outside of diet, you can lower it very fast by well, it's just like diabetes. You have to drastically lower the amount of toxic food you're eating versus the ability to detox your body. So the good thing about high blood pressure, in the common sense, not in like specialty issues, right? Like blood pressure is high because I have a big injury and I keep getting pain, not like that, right? So what I did for high blood pressure, I was 166 over 99, and I think once you get 189 over anything, you're considered emergency. So I was in the second stage level. And the funny thing is, after I got diagnosed, I could lay down at night and hear like a throbbing through my pillow. So that's how I knew. So what did I do? I had a no excuses diet. When I was juicing, see now when it's high blood pressure, it didn't matter if I was juicing the sweet stuff or not. So it was just a lot of green juice. Like I did green, and I did like a lot of pigment, the orange and yellow pigmented juices. So if I was doing my standard juice, I was doing the common combination of Granny Smith apples, which is going to give off a light green color, followed by carrots, which is going to turn the whole thing orange, followed by pineapple. And that was a thickener. So if you're one of those people who love Sunny D or orange juice thickener type stuff, you add the pineapple for that. If you just keep it the apples and the carrots, it's going to be really thin and sweet, but it's going to be mostly orange. But the moment you add that pineapple in there, it's going to thicken it and make it a little bit sweeter. If you want some zing added to it, a little tartness added to it, that's when you squeeze in the half a lemon. So that was my yellow, orangish colored. And if I used a red apple, you get some red color in there too. If you wanted some purple, you would put beets in it. And if you wanted more spice, you would add ginger to it. Now, my green drink was Granny Smith apples because they were green. So I would use about 6 Granny Smith apples, 2 big handfuls. I mean, if I could scoop up the spinach like this, 2 big handful scoops of spinach, 1 big grasp of dandelion stalks, which would probably be about 9 or 10 of them. And let me see, 5 or 6 stalks of dino kale, also known as La Ciento kale. I would do that. Drink it, and those were my regular juices. I had no store-bought juice, no nothing. Like I said, everything was unquestionable. If you saw me driving down the road eating, I was eating raw stalks of regular kale, followed by me chewing cashews. And I know Enqi doesn't choose cashews, but I'm telling you what I did back then before I had all the info I had now. This was like 10 years ago. So I would chew some cashews because they gave off a semi-sweet taste. And then I would put the kale in my mouth and chew it alongside it until it all was well incorporated. Because Layla Africa taught us to extract a lot of the nutrients out of nuts and plants that have a heavy coating on them. And then the enzymes are kind of frozen and locked up. You got to chew and get that saliva in there and break up the fibers real well by chewing real well. So kale took a minute to chew, and so did cashews. So I would just chew the hell out of it until the whole thing was liquid, then swallow. Like a couple of handfuls of cashew, 1 handful of cashews and 1 giant bite of kale. I probably could be chewing that for 3 to 5 minutes. I didn't care. And I would chase everything with water after I was done. So a lot of green, fat, no sugary stuff, no meats, no rice. I didn't do quinoa back then. So a lot of the times if I was eating food, I would choose a starchy food. Like let's say it was sweet potatoes and the starchy food would go with a veggie. So that was how I did it. And now the exercise. So what do I look at as blood pressure as an analogy, not including all the scientific stuff like angiotensin converting enzyme, renin and angiotensin, like none of that, right? Imagine the pipes in your house ran in a circle, like from the kitchen sink downstairs all the way up to the bathroom upstairs and back around again. And imagine your body's the same way. You eat something through the digestive tract, whatever's kept goes in through the portal vein into the bloodstream, and then it goes all around the body, and eventually it makes its way back to the filtering system. Certain things are retained, and then your body lets the rest out. So imagine that's being done. Now imagine that your house is like that, and then you put something real thick and heavy, like too much hair. This commonly happens. Too much hair in the drain to the point where now the water's going down the drain slow to the point where it's backing up. How do we get that through? We can use a chemical to thin out the waste. So this is where blood thinners come in, right? Thin out the liquid moving through the body. So it's got a lot of gunk in there. The problem with thinning the blood is it carries less oxygen. So you're choosing the oxygenated form. So that causes it to flow through faster, but it's thinner. That's why it's working. The other way is you can increase pressure. Because remember, when toxins go into the body, when they sit in certain places, they acidify the body and start breaking things down. So when your body knows that, it uses whatever it has to calm the acid and then push it through faster. So you put an acid in the body, your body's going to use the sodium and the bicarbonate. Remember, the big six, magnesium, calcium, potassium, sodium, bicarbonate, chlorine. Drink water, hydrochloric acid, chlorine, right? Hydrochloric acid, that's the combination. When you have acids in your body can combine sodium and the bicarbonate to buffer the acid, meaning make it more alkaline to balance it in the middle. Now your body will raise the blood pressure to push it through the system faster. And a part of the reason it has to do that is because it's gunk and junk in that bloodstream. So you need to push it faster. Increasing pressure moves it faster. That's a method for your body to get it out. The doctor's problem is to increase pressure is to increase heart rate. That's like me telling you to get on the bench and bench 225 nonstop consistently. Just keep benching 225. Your triceps getting tired, so what? You're breathing too heavy, so what? Keep pumping. When you keep eating the bad stuff and keep your body pumping for that long, it's going to always raise the pressure to match the problem in the system. So maybe you're supposed to be 120 over 80. You eat fries and a burger. You go up to 130 over 90. You do this 3 days in a row. Now you're at 150 over 195 to 100. The body is creating a balancing point. More gunk and junk, more pressure to match to push it through at a certain speed to keep it from being dangerous and tearing your system up. So it's trying to help you. When you put supplements in your body that self-raise the pressure or dilate, because remember, we can raise the pressure, but we're assuming the pipe is a certain size. We increase pressure to push it through that pipe faster. We can also constrict the blood vessels to make the blood vessels smaller, which creates a squeezing motion, which also pushes things through faster. Then we have the dilation. We can open up the hose of the body bigger. We open the hose bigger, there's more room for things to move. So when the sludge gets thicker, just widen it up. And a slight increase in pressure puts less work and demand on the heart because we're dilating the blood vessels. But eventually, the gunk and junk doesn't make the blood vessels dilate because they start to thicken and harden. So they can't stretch as much. So the pressure now has to go up. Your only option is pressure. So what you do is stop eating the gunk and junk, which means your body is already trying to eliminate it. And it's a nonstop flow coming in. So the body's trying to regulate the blood pressure to get it out fast. When it stops coming in, your body keeps up the energy until it starts to see some of the waste go down. When the waste starts to go down, blood pressure goes down to match. Exercise speeds it up. That's why you exercise. When you exercise, some of the energy and the sugars in your body that's dehydrating you, you burn that up. The salts and stuff sitting in your system, you're going to start to sweat, which means the salts and things are coming through your pores, which means it's being eliminated from the body. You're also forcing your heart rate higher, which if you have high blood pressure because of the waste, and then you force your heart rate higher, you're putting more demand on your heart. This is why people who have long-term blood pressure problems in the danger zone can't work out heavy, because they're going to push their blood pressure beyond the threshold, and it can cause the blood vessels, which are already thickened and hardened, to try and dilate, and they can't, and it will burst. You'll wind up with an aneurysm or a stroke because it'll burst. Okay, so now you're seeing the connection, right? So once you do those things, you exercise, raise your heart rate, you're making the pump of things getting pushed out move faster. Now you're sweating, it's coming through your skin. Now you're breathing heavier, it's coming through your breath, because you're processing your body's under if you're under anaerobic exercise, aerobic exercise, meaning oxygen is being brought into your system so your mitochondria can continue to create ATP, and it does that through glucose. Your body is going to, now you can't do the high intensity work, but you're still chugging along, right? You running, you doing deadlifts and burpees and all that. You're still going slower, but you're still moving. But you're breathing. Your body's taking oxygen and using that to break open the fat channels in your body, to break down the sugars and the fat in your body to create more energy to keep you going. So when you have less fat and you have less waste and less weight on your body, you need a lower blood pressure. So you're choosing to raise the heart rate and pressure on your body to push things through faster. As long as no new gunk is coming in, all the toxins are going down, which means the blood pressure can go down, which means the medication has to come down. Because if your blood pressure, let's say mine, 166/99, and they give you some ACE inhibitors and they give you a certain amount of prescription for that, it's meant to take that 166/99 and drag it down to a normal number, which is like 130/90 or 120/80. So if the pressure starts to drop, and I'm taking a medication that's supposed to drop it 46 points, they have to lower the meds, because now if my blood pressure is 150 over something, I just reduced my blood pressure on the top number 16 points. So I have to reduce the medication to match. Otherwise, I'm going to go below normal blood pressure by the same. And too low blood pressure will make your ass pass out. So they have to match it up. Eventually, when the blood pressure is normal, what the hell are they going to give you meds for? To drop the pressure? Now they try to kill you. So by bringing the number down on your own, the medication naturally has to come down and eventually be gone. They can't say, I'm going to keep you on the medication, because if they do, they're giving you really low dose, which means if you're at the norm of, like, let's say 120/80, the medication is small just to get some money, but it might be bringing your ass down to like 117/73. So your blood pressure is still close to normal, but they're just trickling the medication in just to keep your ass on it. But you would only know that if you understand what's going on. Okay. What else we got? Well, eating a bad meal causes the blood pressure to rise immediately. If you have chronic high blood pressure, meaning you raised your blood pressure to the point where the doctors know you've been eating bad food for a while, remember, there's a glucose tolerance factor. Salt works the same. So I'm gonna give you the normal analogy. If I make you curl a 10-pound weight, 3 sets of 25, 2 times a week, Monday, Friday, and I do this for a whole month. One day you're going to come in and be like, can we raise the weight? This is ridiculous. Like, I can do this 100 times and never get tired. Your tolerance to the weight, your body has created a tolerance where it can handle the weight. High blood pressure, high sugar pressures have a response your body gives. Eventually, your body adapts to that response because it expects you to do something. So it's like, okay, if this is what they want to do, in order for me to keep them normal, I have to respond this way. So with sugar and blood pressure, your body's like, poison comes in. We know what to do when that comes in. Raise the pressure, get it out of there. Your body becomes adapted to creating that response. So yes, if you have high blood pressure, even if you get the number back to normal, your body is like, oh, I recognize that. That's that damn salt. Raise the blood pressure, get that shit out of there as quickly as possible. The response is quicker. The only way to normalize that quick response is now, not only do you have to normalize the numbers, you have to go a long period of time not eating a chunk of salt and not eating a chunk of sodium and bad food and grease and all that. Because now your body's like, well, that's rare. So we can lower our response and our stress load on that because it doesn't happen often anymore. Same with sugar. You know what? That sugar doesn't come in like that anymore. So our tolerance can go down. We're not used to seeing it like we did. This person's been like 4 or 5 years and they barely eat any sugar. So now we're going to move more towards the beta cells, which is what the hell? If it's insulin, glucagon. So now instead of being hyped to dish out insulin, the body's hyped to dish out glucagon, which is, hey, yo, it's not enough sugar. Break down the fat cells and put some sugar in the man's system. Versus there's insulin. Yo, it's too much sugar. So when you were putting sugar in your body under diabetes, your body was flying to throw insulin in there, like burn that up, burn it. making you hyper, your children hyper, but you taught them over time to sit the hell still. So turned into diabetes because the sugar just sat and the glucose tolerance rose. So now the moment sugar comes in, instant response. Your body's like, oh, there it is. We know exactly what to do. Because we don't want it there. The body knows it does not want that much in the system. Same with high blood pressure. So it learns to respond faster. But the problem is constantly doing that is a high stressor on the body, which overworks the heart. And the doctors give you the meds, and they're not lying when they say they save your life. That heart keeps working too hard. Eventually, it can't keep up, and it gets tired. It's like I said, you benching that 225 nonstop. No one's taking the pressure off. Eventually, you have a weak heart. It can't press anymore, so it's doing the best it can. So what do they give it? Pacemaker. They shoot an electric charge in there to help it keep pace to what the problem is. And the blood pressure medication to not make the pace too high, because you've ate so much that if they stop the medication, the blood pressure going to go where it need to be, and the heart's too weak to handle it. Your ass going to stroke out and heart attack and die. That's simple. So it's always connected. Your heart will race when you ate bad. Yeah, that's that stress response. Your body is quickly responding, and that's not a good thing. That rapid stress response is not a good thing. You got to slow it down. It's difficult because we give in to the craving. Your body has a circadian rhythm. It will give you a bad or good, unless it's a painful bad, like getting punched in the face. Some people might be like, "Oh, I'm ready for that because I can dish it better." But I'm talking about food. Like sometimes we measure the taste of food versus the reaction we get from it. And that craving, that want of it is so bad, but that's because you've been eating it so long. First of all, they took the fact that you like strawberry, mangoes, watermelons, and they saw the sugar in it. And they studied what makes people like this so much. Oh, shit, it's the sugar. So let's find a way to pack more sugar in with that buttery goodness and make them really want it. And what happens is you taste it, you like the taste, you taste it again. Your body develops more and more taste receptors for it, more and more insulin receptors to be able to recover from the sugar rush. The want to move is going to get higher, but you train yourself to just sit still and be like, the itis, I'm satisfied. You fall asleep and now it turns into fat. So you've been psychologically trained to destroy yourself. So when you're getting the craving for sugar, it's your body reminding you of a rhythm you created. It's waiting for the sugar so that it can perform its response and have the proper energy ready from you sleeping to take care of it. The problem is you keep raising the amount, and eventually the body's like, okay, they raised the sugar. I raise the reaction, raise the sugar, raise the reaction. But then a point comes where the body's like, remember, it's a bunch of pushing and shoving. Eventually, the reactions sap up so much energy and stuff from the rest of the body. Something at a moment's notice doesn't catch the energy and the resources it needs, and you feel it as a pain or a symptom. And that's the moment where it's like, oh shit, I might have went a little heavy beyond the threshold. The pain signal is the way your body is told, get over there and deal with that now. That's why the pain doesn't suddenly start and just last. You start off with a slight pain, and then over time, the pain holds and gets greater to the point where you can't take it no more. The food doesn't outweigh the damage. Now you go to the doctor, say, yeah, I just kept eating the doctor. I figured that was a little nut and I just ignored it. And here you are. So you let the food craving get over on you when really the food craving will only change when you change. You can't say, I'm going to wait until I'm ready, because every day you're eating the bad thing more and more. The craving and taste receptors and insulin receptors get greater. So your body's response, the kickback response to wanting you to have that, your body's just giving you signals you trained it to want. Yo, around this time, I normally have cookies and cakes and candy. Your body's going to immediately, in the middle of everything you're doing, make you think of cookie, cake, and candy because it's a part of your circadian rhythm. Then you're going to try and ignore it. And guess what? The body made you go to sleep and built enough energy and memory to respond to the way you normally move, your circadian rhythm. When you suddenly stop that circadian rhythm, that's when you get a rush of stress and people get the headaches and all kinds of stuff because they went on a sudden fast that their body did not have the memory to create a system for. So the body quickly taps emergency reserves of energy, which is a stress response. Stress responses tap additional energy, minerals, and resources to keep you alive. When you go into a fast, that happens too. And the fast is like, yo, the stressor is your body's like, at this time, normally calories and energy come in. It's not coming in. Is there a famine? And your body thinks there's a famine and you get a response from that. That's right. But psychologically trained to destroy yourselves. It's all stress. They know how your taste buds work. They know how addiction grows. And Enqi's trying to show people that melanin makes it worse because melanin binds frequencies better and it binds opioids better. So it means that your addiction is going to be harder than a person who's white or light skinned. So I'm out of time, guys. I got to get ready to move into the school. Um, don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, that's Marvin Health and Arts right there at the bottom of the screen. It's the same thing on Instagram. The Cash App is right there on the bottom of the screen if you guys want to tap that. Of course, that's going to always get people excited to want to create more stuff. I always talk about that. Follow Urban Nerds Worldwide because now I'm starting to talk some, health stuff, but nothing controversial over there, just explanations because it is a channel for you to pick up more information to show the intelligence of us as a people. So yeah, keep those things in mind, keep the support going. And like we always say, the more you support us over here in these channels, the more we bring you back more content to kind of keep things going. And I'm glad you guys actually consume like worthy content. Like it's a really big deal when you're considering your health. That's a really big deal. Because nobody, like, even though we love having people around us, we can take when people pass away. We can't take when we see people die in pain. We can't see that. That's a slow death. That's punishment. That's torture. And we're trying to get that out the way. We want life to be fun experiences. Yeah, I know I got this gum in my mouth, but I don't eat a lot during the day. And when I'm about to be in a long-winded event, I'll definitely get that artificial sugar and that gum going for a little bit till I get out after all them hours, and then I can eat something a little bit healthier. So yes, I'm chewing the gum. All right, peoples, thanks for coming through. Love y'all as usual. Share the video. Make sure Dr. Enqi's study gets out there because that's for people who are willing to read and really study into it and check it out. I think that's like the most important thing he's ever put out. And I can see a lot in it from the moment I read it. So check things out. Keep on supporting. Keep on coming in to hang out with the family. Hopefully one of these days when me and George start moving around with the Urban Nerds, I'll be in your towns and we could come hang out and you guys can come hang out with the Urban Nerds for a little bit. All right, peoples, no problem. You're welcome. Catch you guys in a little bit.